John McCain III, one of the most prominent late 20th and early 21st century US politicians and the longtime senior senator of the state of Arizona representing the Republican Party, has died. He died 1 year and 1 month after being diagnosed with brain cancer on August the 25th, 2018 in Cornville, Arizona, aged 81. He was born in the Panama Canal Zone at Coco Solo Naval Air Station on August the 29th, 1936. He attended about 20 schools because his father moved frequently as a naval officer. In 1954, he graduated from Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Northern Virginia. He referred to himself as an Episcopalian as recently as in June 2007, after which date he said he came to identify as a Baptist. Following the footsteps of his father and grandfather, McCain entered the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis. He graduated in 1958. He began his early military career as an ensign and started 2.5 years of training at Pensacola to become a naval aviator. He completed flight school in 1960 and became a naval pilot of ground attack aircraft. At age 28, in July 1965, he married Carol Shep, who was a model from Philadelphia. He adopted her 2 young children, Douglas and Andrew. He and Carol then had a daughter named Sydney. He requested a combat assignment and was assigned to the aircraft carrier USS Forrestal flying A-4 Skyhawks. His combat duty began in mid-1967 when Forrestal was assigned to a bombing campaign, Operation Rolling Thunder, during the Vietnam War. In July 1967, he was a lieutenant commander when he was near the epicenter of the USS Forrestal fire, but he was able to escape from the burning jet. He was, however, struck in the legs and chest by fragments. The ensuing fire killed 134 sailors and took 24 hours to bring under control. In October 1967, aged 31, he was captured by North Vietnamese soldiers while flying his 23rd bombing mission over North Vietnam when his A-4E Skyhawk was shot down by a missile over Hanoi. He nearly drowned after parachuting into Truc Buck Lake. Some North Vietnamese pulled him ashore, then others crushed his shoulder with a rifle butt and bayoneted him. He was then transported to Hanoi's main Hoa Lo prison, nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton. Although he was seriously wounded and injured, his captors refused to treat him. During the next over 5 years, he was brutally tortured in prison until being released in March 1973. His wartime injuries left him permanently incapable of raising his arms above his head. After being released, he returned to the site with his wife Cindy and family on a few occasions to come to grips with what happened to him during his capture. As a returned prisoner of war, McCain became a celebrity of sorts. He underwent treatment for his injuries that included months of grueling physical therapy. He attended the National War College at Fort McNair in Washington, D.C. from 1973 to 1974. In 1976, he became commanding officer of a training squadron that was stationed in Florida. He served as the Navy's liaison to the U.S. Senate beginning in 1977. In April 1979, McCain met Cindy Lou Hensley, a teacher from Phoenix, Arizona, whose father had founded a large beer distributorship. They began dating, and he urged his wife Carol to grant him a divorce which she did in February 1980. The uncontested divorce took effect in April 1980. They remained on good terms. McCain and Hensley were married in May 1980, with Senators William Cohen and Gary Hart, incidentally a Republican and a Democrat, attending as groomsmen. McCain's children did not attend, and several years would pass before they reconciled. John and Cindy McCain entered into a prenuptial agreement that kept most of her family's assets under her name. They would always keep their finances apart and file separate income tax returns. He decided to leave the Navy, and that took effect in April 1981 as a captain. He was designated as disabled and awarded a disability pension. He then decided to seek a seat in the United States House of Representatives, and bucking the federal trend, which saw the Democrats gain over 20 seats, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1982, and he was re-elected in 1984. He decided in 1986 to contest the open open Senate seat that became contested after former Republican presidential candidate and longtime U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona decided to retire. He was easily elected to the Senate in November 1986. Again, he bucked the federal trend, which saw the Republicans lose control of the Senate by defeating his Democratic opponent, former state legislator Richard Kimball, by over 20 points. He became a member of the Armed Services Committee on taking office as a U.S. Senator for Arizona in January 1987. He soon gained national visibility, delivering a well-received speech at the 1988 Republican National Convention. However, he did not become the vice presidential candidate. He became embroiled in a scandal during the 1980s as one of the 5 United States senators comprising the so-called Keating Five. Between 1982 and 1987, he had received $112,000 in lawful political contributions from Charles Keating Jr. and his associates at Lincoln Savings and Loan Association, along with trips on Keating's jets that McCain belatedly repaid in 1989. In 1992, he was re-elected despite President Bush's loss to Bill Clinton, gaining 56% of the vote. He developed a reputation for independence during the 1990s. He took pride in challenging the Republican Party's establishment and leadership forces, becoming difficult to categorize politically. He voted to confirm President Clinton's nominees Stephen Breyer and Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1994 and 1993, respectively. He attacked what he saw as the corrupting influence of large political contributions from corporations, labor unions, other organizations, and wealthy individuals, and he made this his signature issue. Starting in 1994, he worked with Democratic Wisconsin Senator Russell Feingold on campaign finance reform. Their McCain-Feingold bill attempted to put limits on soft money. The term maverick Republican became a label frequently applied to McCain, and he also used it himself. In November 1998, he won a landslide victory over his Democratic opponent, environmental lawyer Ed Ranger, and started his third Senate term accordingly in January 1999. Again, he bucked to some extent the federal trend that saw the Republicans make no net gains in the U.S. Senate and actually lose 5 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives over what was considered the American voters' disillusionment and boredom with the constant barrage of calls to impeach President Clinton that had started to surface in January 1998, when the story of his then already ended extramarital affair with a young woman who had served as a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky, first were published. In March 1999, McCain voted to approve the NATO bombing campaign against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. In August 1999, his memoir Faith of My Fathers, co-authored with Mark Salter, was published. He unsuccessfully tried to become the Republican presidential candidate in 2000. He was re-elected to the United States Senate in November 2004, garnering 77% of the vote. His little-known Democratic opponent, schoolteacher Stuart Starkey, took at least most of the remainder of the vote. In May 2005, McCain led the so-called Gang of 14 in the Senate, which he established a compromise that preserved the ability of senators to filibuster judicial nominees, but only in extraordinary circumstances. The compromise took the steam out of the filibuster movement, but some Republicans remained disappointed that the compromise did not eliminate filibusters of judicial nominees in all circumstances. Breaking from his 2001 and 2003 votes, McCain supported the Bush tax cut extension in May 2006, saying not to do so would amount to a tax increase. He formally announced his intention to run for US President in April 2007. He won the Republican nomination fairly easily. However, he lost the general election in November 2008 to Democratic Senator Barack Obama of Illinois. He received over 45% of the vote, but Obama was clearly ahead of him with over 52% of the vote. He managed to win 173 Electoral College votes to Obama's 365. He failed to win most of the battleground states and lost some traditionally Republican ones. He, however, graciously conceded to fellow Senator Obama. Some people say that aside from his advanced age and physical disabilities and his identification, despite his maverick Republican image with the by then notably unpopular Bush administration, and then the alleged incompetence and or ignorance of major international and other political issues, or unpopular views on them of his vice presidential candidate, then Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, could have contributed to his defeat, or at least to the magnitude of his defeat. In 2010, he was again re-elected to the US Senate easily over Democratic City Councilman Rodney Glassman. In the lame duck session of the 111th Congress, McCain voted for the Compromise, Tax Relief, Unemployment Insurance Reauthorization and Job Creation Act of 2010, but against the DREAM Act, which he had once sponsored, and the New START Treaty. Most prominently, he continued to lead the eventually losing fight against the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal. In 1993, President Clinton had instituted that policy as a compromise between the full opening of US Army recruitment to homosexuals and then the old policy of denying service in the US Army to people who were known to be homosexuals. Under that policy, homosexuals could keep or had to keep their lifestyle, their sexual orientation private, Otherwise, they could be or would be dismissed. During the Arab Spring revolts in Northern Africa and Western Asia, McCain urged that the embattled Egyptian president, Mr. Hosni Mubarak, step down, as he did. In the 2012 Republican Party presidential primaries, McCain endorsed his former 2008 rival Mitt Romney. During 2013, he was a member of the bipartisan group of senators, the Gang of Eight, which announced principles for further tried comprehensive immigration reform. The resulting Border Security, Economic Opportunity and Immigration Modernization Act of 2013 passed the Senate by a 68-32 margin, but faced an uncertain future in the House. He supported the Euromaidan protests against Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and his government, and appeared on the Independence Square of Kiev, the Ukraine's capital, in December 2013. He vocally then supported providing arms to Ukrainian military forces, saying the sanctions imposed against Russia were not enough. In 2016, he was re-elected to the US Senate, securing a sixth term as United States Senator from Arizona. However, in July 2017, he was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive brain tumor. Standard treatment options for this tumor include chemotherapy and radiation, although even with treatment, average survival time is approximately 14 months. McCain had survived previous cancers, including melanoma. He returned to the Senate already on July the 25th, under 2 weeks after brain surgery. He had cast a deciding vote, allowing the Senate to begin consideration of bills to replace Obamacare. Along with that vote, he delivered a speech criticizing the party line voting process used by the Republicans, as well as by the Democrats, in passing Obamacare to begin with. On July the 28th, he cast the decisive vote against the Republicans' final proposal that month, the so-called skinny repeal option, which failed 49-51. He did not vote in the Senate after December 2017, remaining instead in Arizona to undergo cancer treatment. On April the 15th, 2018, he underwent surgery for an infection relating to diverticulitis, and the following day was reported to be in stable condition. His family announced on August the 24th, 2018, that he would no longer receive treatment for his cancer. The following day, he died with his wife and family beside him at his home in Cornville, Arizona. Tributes were widely given on social media. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey will appoint McCain's interim replacement until a special election is held in 2020, the winner of which will serve to the end of McCain's term in January 2023. Under Arizona law, the appointed replacement must be of the same party as McCain, therefore a Republican. The potential appointees include McCain's widow Cindy, former Senator Jon Kyl, and former Representatives Matt Salmon and John Shadegg.